This is Hannah from Lyme Advise, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Dan Wolff. Dan is a tick prevention specialist who has developed a tick removal tool called Tick Ease. Thank you, Dan, for speaking with me today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hannah. It's great to be here, and I hope we can provide some good information to your viewers and listeners.
Okay. To begin, can you please tell me what the proper way to remove a tick is?
Well, that's a good question, and it's a question that's been, I don't want to say controversial, but there are different approaches to proper tick removal, and you know the there have been a lot of methods that have been around for years and years that we are finally finding out that aren't necessarily the best way for tick removal. So when a tick is attached to your skin and actively feeding, ticks, by the way, only feed on blood. So they are little vampires. And the best way to remove a tick, as shown on sites like the CDC or other larger organizations or expert organizations, is to simply use a pair of fine-tipped or pointy tweezers to get down as close to the skin as possible and squeeze on the mouth parts of that tick firmly, and to remove straight up or pull up in a steady, firm fashion straight up in the direction the tick is biting. And what you'll see happening is the skin will come up with it because it's in there pretty tightly with its mouth parts, and it'll pull, and then pop. In a lot of cases, you can hear an audible pop, which is kind of weird, but you can pull that straight up, and at that point, if the tick is intact, in one piece, is acting normally, is walking around or wiggling its legs, you've actually done it correctly. You don't want to agitate that tick in the removal process.
Okay. What are some ways that you should absolutely not remove a tick?
Okay. Well, again, my goal here is to make things as simple and not complicated for people. There are a lot of gadgets out there that may suggest twisting the tick or burning the tick. None of these are necessary. Actually, in some cases, with some of these gadgets, you could put yourself in increased danger or increase your risk of exposure to pathogens by either agitating, poisoning that tick while it's attached with, or suffocating with Vaseline or nail polish or peppermint oil or any of these things. Again, simple is better, but do not put a lit or a hot match on it, cigarette, or don't apply any heat. Don't apply any substance to that tick, because imagine a tick with sort of like a hypodermic needle, and that's into your skin. And if you poison that tick, or it feels like it's going to be killed, it may spit and expose your body to this is a highly technical term, what I like to refer to as yucky tick juice. And that stuff on your fingers could get in your mouth, your eyes, any other mucous membranes, or any opening into the skin, like the bite site. And that's what you want to avoid. So using pointy tweezers, and the key is pointy tweezers, to get down low on the tick and remove it straight up, usually does the trick because it cuts off any flow of fluids or yucky tick juice out of the tick because of the squeezing process, and it lifts it up out of the skin where it can be safely disposed of, or preferably saved for potential testing. So other gadgets out there, there's something called the tick twister, which explicitly says on the cdc.gov website under tick removal, do not twist or jerk the tick while it's in you. The other thing is, it also explicitly says fine-tip tweezers are the best, and so it's unnecessary to use things like the tick key, which looks like a little bottle opener, where you place it over the tick, and you're actually pulling the tick sideways rather than straight up. So those are things not to do.
Okay. If someone finds a tick on their person and they do not have sharp tweezers available in their household, what's the next best thing that they can use to remove the tick?
Okay, that's a good question as well, because it is, in my opinion, super important to remove that tick as quickly as possible, but also as safely as possible. So the reason being is that, particularly with our deer ticks up here in the Northeast and in other areas of the country, but I'm more familiar with that deer tick, is that the longer it's attached and feeding, the more opportunity these infectious microbes have to be transmitted into the host or into your body. So, but they carry so many different types of diseases right now or infections. Um, the problem is that each of these different parasites or bacteria or viruses have a different transmission time. So I hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, well, the tick was only on me for like 12 hours, so I'm safe from Lyme because doesn't it take 24 or 30, 36 hours for that to be transmitted?" Well, I don't know the answer to that question, but even if it was the truth, then you may be safe from Lyme, but Powassan virus, on the other hand, only takes 15 minutes to transmit. So it's a little different for each type of infection. So yes, you want to get it out quickly. So if you don't have a sharp tweezer, I would then go. The next best bet would be your regular household tweezers, but be very very careful because household tweezers versus fine tipped can increase your chance of either squeezing that tick in the wrong place or rupturing it or tearing it during the removal process, because household tweezers were designed to pull hair, not ticks, and they have those flat ends. So, particularly on nymphal stage deer ticks, which are out now, active now, um, you just want to be super careful. I mean, in the absence of anything else, take a credit card and go backwards on the way the tick is embedded, sort of, and scrape it off if you know you're not going to have access to a fine tip tweezer anytime real soon. But not recommended, but could do the trick in a no pun intended, in a pinch.
What should a person do if, during the removal of a tick, a portion of the tick is still in their body?
Well, I wouldn't go jumping off any tall buildings as a result of that. um, some people, tell me, "Oh my God, I left the head in, and now I'm really going to be in for trouble." That's not true at all. First of all, ticks do not have heads. The only thing that enters your skin when a tick feeds is its mouth parts, and the mouth parts are elongated. Imagine a mosquito. It's kind of like a hypodermic needle, as I mentioned earlier, and that embeds into that is penetrating through your skin. That's a very small, uh, foreign body, and if you do break it off, um, just keep this in mind. Once you remove the body of that tick, you're at no further risk of exposure. So you've already been exposed as much as you're going to be, and if you do break off the mouth part, it just acts like a tiny little splinter, like a tiny little dirty splinter, and that may get infected locally and cause an itchy welt or kind of a pussy little scabby area on your skin. But that should work itself out on its own, and you should be okay with that. Um, just the way it is. I would clean it up well. Try to get it out with a pointy tweezer if you can see it under a magnification. But it's not the end of the world. Unfortunately, you've already been exposed by the bite itself, and then again, you might want to get that tick tested.
It says on your website that Tick Ease is in compliance with the CDC guidelines for tick removal. Could you go over what those guidelines are for removal?
Absolutely. If you go to the CDC website, which is at cdc.gov, you could search tick removal, and they have a little demonstration or a little illustration here of how to remove a tick. Number one, it just says use fine tip tweezers to grasp the tick as close to the skin surface as possible. I mean, it can't be any simpler than that. And that's why I get a kick out of all these, some of these other groups that are touting these complicated processes of, drop this on it, freeze the tick, twist it out. No, just pinch it and pull it straight up in a slow, steady fashion. That's all you need to do. So just the fact that the Tickies tool is designed with a pointy angled tweezer, which actually makes it even easier to use and easier to get into those tight places where ticks love to bite. It's in compliance with what they recommend. So that's just basically, it's as basic as you can get. And that's just the idea that I had when I went in, that went into designing the product itself.
So ticks can be different sizes based on the type of tick and the stage of development. Are there different ways of removing a tick depending on its size?
Absolutely. There is a method that has been used based or mainly on pets for a lot of years now, and it's what I refer to as the scoop method. And the tick spoon, the tick twister have these. It's kind of like a V-shaped slot, and this is really good for use on ticks that are larger and engorged. For example, here in the Northeast, we have the American dog tick. And the dog ticks are pretty large as compared to the other types of ticks around. I don't know if for all you pet owners out there, you probably have experienced this at one time or another. And if that engorged dog tick is in an easily accessible area on your pet, you can simply slide the V-shaped slot under the tick and then pull straight up in the direction it's feeding in a slow and steady fashion, just like with the tweezers. There is an application for that. And actually, on my fine tip tweezers, we have the slotted scoop method on the back. The difference between mine and the tick spoon or the twister is that I guess you could call it a footprint, is much smaller and angled. So that will allow you then at the base of the ear, under the armpit of the dog, around the tail, the base of the tail, or any other tight area that ticks often feed. So that allows you to slide it right underneath and lift straight up. And there's some videos on, if you search Tickies under YouTube, you can find those videos, a lot of pet, ticks myself removing ticks from pets. The other thing you want to be super careful about is the nymphal stage deer ticks at this time of the year. And you want to be careful because they're so tiny. And I have actually had, on two separate occasions, two nymphal stage deer ticks feed inside my belly button. So you really, what I found was the only way to remove those effectively is with the really fine-tipped tweezers. But with the angle on the Tickies, you can get inside your belly button or right behind your ear, which a lot of kids seem to get ticks. And you want to be super careful though. So there's just ways. I guess the methods are similar, but you want to be careful with the different sizes of the ticks. Nymphal stage deer ticks, because of their size, if you do squeeze them in the wrong place, you could easily rupture them. And again, expose yourself to that yucky tick juice that we don't want. So, so there are differences in your approach.
You had mentioned that kids often get ticks behind their ears. What are other common places to look out for both children, animals, and adults?
Okay, so with kids, what I found is hair, the ears, and at the base of the hairline on the back of their necks. That seems to be number one because I'm talking little, smaller kids, very young children to toddlers, and that's because they're really not so aware of their bodies. I removed a tick from a 4-year-old, and it was the biggest tick I've ever seen in my life. I mean, and I've removed more than 3,000 live ticks, and how mean, I guess the parents really weren't expecting it, and they weren't looking at her head that closely. Fortunately for her, it was a dog tick rather than a deer tick, and dog ticks in our area are more of a nuisance than anything else and don't transmit a lot of diseases. It's possible, but we don't see it a lot here, and they are not known for transmitting Lyme, more so Rocky Mountain spotted fever. I did suggest they send it in for testing. They sent it to our partners at UMass, at tickreport.com, and they did get a negative report. So that was all good news. So, for children, just be aware because they're not like us. They take a shower less frequently. I'm kind of sitting around after I've been out in the woods and I feel my hair for anything unusual, but they don't really do that. So it's up to the parents to really be responsible when it comes to proper tick checks on children. In general, where I found most of my ticks, and by the way, I've been bitten more than 200 times by deer ticks.
Oh, wow.
I have found them. I get a lot under my arm and along my rib cage on each side of my body. For some reason, they like that. They do like warm, moist areas where the skin seems to be a little thinner. It's just easier for them to latch on and get a blood meal. I've had them behind my knees. I've had them, unfortunately, in my groin or crotch area, which seems to be also a favorite place. Again, I've had them in my belly button. But you want to check along the hairline, behind the ears. I'm known as Tick Man Dan, and I did a sort of a video blog a couple of years ago that's entitled Tick Man Dan Says Do Your Daily Tick Checks and Don't Neglect Your Crevices. So in the video, it just tells you all your crevice areas need to be examined either by yourself or another person. And another hint that I got from the University of Rhode Island, tickencounter.org, is that if you're this is going to sound kind of funny, but please do it if you can. Just put a reminder note, a sticky note, or a piece of tape, and write on it at eye level where you would see it when you're sitting on the toilet. And in my video, I say, write a note that says something to the extent of, here I sit and wonder why I have to check for ticks where the sun don't shine. And then it says, proceed to examine all of your private goodies until you're satisfied that there are no hitchhikers on your junk. Because that's where the ticks like to go. So it's a perfect opportunity for you to do a closer examination of your, as I call them, private goodies. So that's just those areas. You're not going to find a tick, you will, but not usually in the center of your chest or on the top of your thigh. It's, again, these crevice areas. Pets, same thing I mentioned earlier, base of the ears. Dogs get ticks on them pretty much on their chest and under their chin because that's the first point of contact. Dogs are always sniffing with their nose to the ground through the brush and the bushes. And then the ticks immediately start to move. I usually see them a lot on my dog, especially on the neck behind the ears. So, but again, examine all of the crevice areas under the arms, around the crotch area, even along the back of the spine. I've found, depending on the coat of your dog, I'm talking about. But certainly cats get ticks too. For some reason, cats don't typically show any symptoms if exposed to tick-borne infections. Dogs can. My dog's had tick-borne illness in the past few years, and fortunately, he responded well to the antibiotics. So just be thorough and just look at all those areas with crevices.
So for my dogs, we were instructed by our veterinarian to put this gel treatment on the back of their their necks, I guess, spreading apart their fur and placing it against their skin. Do you know in general how effective those gel treatments are?
Well, I'm not an expert in the prevention applications for animals.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely a lot of stuff out there, from organic to chemical to treated materials. I've had experience with the product Frontline. My dogs tolerated it well. Every once in a while they still will get a tick on them. I don't know if it's just the way that the dog is behaving, getting wet, or not. What I've heard the most good things about in my travels and my experience would be the Seresto collar. I hear that that's been doing very well. So you may want to try that. One thing to note is that if the dog is swimming a lot or getting bathed a lot, replace it a little bit earlier than indicated on the packaging. What I do use on my pets, a lot is a permethrin treated bandana, and that's an additional level of protection against ticks on top of their current flea and tick application or whatever they're using. It's really up to the owner to be comfortable with it. I know I don't really particularly feel good about having my pet ingest a pill that kills ticks when the ticks start to feed. But some people do use that, and it works fine. Some people have claimed that the topical applications have caused a reaction in their animals. Fortunately, mine have been fine, but others are showing that they believe that it's caused some sort of negative reaction in them. So, but the permethrin bandanas work really well. That's actually what they call an acaricide. So if the tick comes into contact with it directly, they will fall off and die. And there's a company called Insect Shield at insectshield.com that will provide you with a lot of options when it comes to pre-treated permethrin apparel for people and pets. And as well as you can get permethrin in a liquid form that you actually can apply yourself to your apparel. It's not for use on skin. It's not for use with cats. But you can apply it, let it dry, and it is the best for repelling and killing ticks that come in contact with it.
Do you have a story that sticks out in your mind regarding ticks that threw you for a loop?
Not really a story, but I am always amazed at the tenacity of these, what I call insidious little blood-sucking parasites. And I have seen on numerous occasions. Well, actually, there is a story, but it came out of a different part of the world, out of Africa, where a stray dog was brought to a shelter, a rescue, and just the images of the infestation on these ticks was just heartbreaking. I mean, the poor dog was almost dead from just loss of blood. From the amount of ticks that were on it. And I don't know if you can search online for, African dog with ticks, but there are some graphics that you can take a look at. But, it just goes to show you in certain parts of the world or parts of our country where there are just so many ticks, and they're just all over these animals. Up in the northern part of the U.S., along the Canadian border, the moose are actually experiencing some difficulties where the winter tick is so plentiful, so large, and they're getting on the moose, and they're taking so much blood out of the moose and irritating their skin where their bites are, that the moose become anemic in the brutally cold winters up in, northern Maine or southern Canada. The moose will then get itchy and scratch, and their fur falls off, so they get anemic, and then they freeze to death. And this has really impacted certain areas with the moose population, and that's kind of a scary thing as well. But the first example I was going to tell you about was whenever I see a picture of a tick that's attached to a strange place, and I've seen numerous pictures of ticks that are biting a dog through the gum in their base of a tooth in their mouth. I've also seen a tick embedded in the eyeball of a cat. So these are pretty crazy images. But again, it just shows you how tenacious these parasites can be.
So, lastly, I know you joke that the best way to prevent being bitten by ticks is just to lock yourself in a room. So, after that, how can we best protect ourselves from ticks?
Well, again, there's a lot of stuff out there, and a lot of stories, and where certain colors, certain people with certain blood types are less likely to get ticks. I don't know about all that stuff, but as far as prevention goes, when you're out walking, the standard things will apply. And people always say wear light colored clothing, and light colored clothing is not going to keep the ticks off you. What it's going to do is allow you to see them while they're walking or on you easier. So obviously, if you're wearing white, it's easier to see a little black tick than it is when you're wearing black. So you can do that. You can tuck your pants into your socks, which will make it a little bit more difficult for the ticks to get against your skin right away. They will still get in somehow. And also nymphal stage ticks can go through the fibers of a sock. I mean, that's how small they are. They can wiggle their way through. So the best defense that I have is to have permethrin treated apparel. And you can do it yourself, as I mentioned, spray your pants, but you have to let it dry completely. Again, it's not for your skin, it's for your clothing. This is going to be the best thing that you can do. Insect Shield can even treat your own clothing and send them back to you. It's a better process, but in the absence of using Insect Shield, you can use the spray. So that's going to be my number one thing, is to wear permethrin treated apparel when hiking or exposed into the woods. You can try the DEET. I'm not a huge fan. It's not going to hurt, but the problem is you can't cover your body completely with DEET. And because of the way ticks breathe, very infrequently, sometimes a few times an hour, and they're slow moving, they're kind of sluggish, they can get on your leg where you might have DEET on it. And if they don't like it, they won't just drop off. They'll just continue to move around, try to move away from it. And I've never in my life seen anybody that's saturated their crotch or groin area with DEET. So that's an untreated area which the ticks can find. So natural products, again, if you like them and you think it works, then continue to use it. I would certainly go with the permethrin treated apparel over any other option that we have currently.
Okay. Is there anything that I missed that you would like to add?
Oh, I could talk all day if you'd like. No, it's just important to know sort of the life cycle and the behavior of ticks when they're active. This information can be found on my website. Your listeners can certainly contact me directly. I do try to get back to everybody. Can I give you the number?
Of
The
course.
phone number, if you want. Okay, it's an easy number to remember. It's a toll-free number at 855 Tick Ready. And you can leave the DY off at the end of ready if you want. But it's Tick Ready, and the website is tickease.com. I have a lot of good resources and some links back to the Tick Encounter resource site, which is wonderful for anything tick related. They're out of the University of Rhode Island, and that's tickencounter.org. If you have any further questions about testing, what to do after you're bitten, what are your options, when should you talk to your doctor or not, those types of things. I'm happy to answer those, specifically when the questions come in from your viewers or listeners.
Thank you so much, Tick Man Dan, for taking the time to speak with me today.
That's great. I really enjoy it. Just one thing that I do love is talking ticks, as you probably have figured out pretty quickly. And good luck. And I really enjoy the work that you guys are doing to raise awareness.
Thank you.